So how can an idea from way back in 1845 still grab our attention today? Well, we're about to find out. We're going to dive into a work by a theologian named Gardner Spring called The Attraction of the Cross. It's pretty amazing, really. He built this entire, detailed theological system all around a single event in history. And in this explainer, we're going to break down exactly how he did it, piece by piece.
So, you might be asking, why did Spring even write this thing? You see, he was looking around and he got worried. He saw what he called a weak and shallow piety starting to take over the church. He felt that the really strong core truths of the faith were getting pushed to the side. So this book, this was his answer, a way to lay out the gospel's central message clear as day.
And Spring builds his entire case around solving one massive problem. It's this huge theological puzzle that people have wrestled with forever. Look, if God is perfectly just, then he has to punish what's wrong, right? So how can he possibly forgive people who've messed up without just kind of looking the other way and going against his own nature? That single question is the engine that drives everything else in his book.
All right, so Section 1, A Fading Faith's Answer. Spring felt the religious world of his day was drifting. He believed that to fix this, people needed something more than just nice feelings. They needed a rock-solid, logical system of truth to really anchor their faith.
And this, right here, is the absolute heart of his argument. For Spring, the cross isn't just a nice symbol. It's not a relic. He says it is the master key, the one place where all of God's qualities, his justice, his mercy, his love, his righteousness, all come together in perfect harmony. And that is his answer to the massive question we just talked about.
Now, before we get into all the deep theology, Spring says we have to start with the actual story. For him, the power of the cross isn't some myth. It's not a parable. He argues it's rooted in a real event that happened at a specific time and in its specific place.
Spring is so careful to lay out this historical narrative, and you can see the key moments here. The agony in the garden, Gethsemane, shows you the sheer weight of what was about to happen. The sham trial highlights the injustice of it all. The public torture and crucifixion, that shows the absolute depth of the suffering. See, for Spring, these aren't just details in a story. They are the absolute bedrock, the necessary historical facts that his entire theological system is built on.
Okay, so with that history in place, now we can get into the why. Spring argues that this brutal historical event wasn't just a tragic death of a good man. Oh no, it was something far more meaningful. It was a sacrifice.
And to understand that, we need to get a handle on this key term, atonement. In Spring's system, what this means is that Christ's death wasn't just an accident. It was a specific, deliberate payment. It was the one act that could fully satisfy the demands of God's perfect justice, which then opens the door for forgiveness without God having to compromise who he is.
Okay, so let's walk through the logic of this, step by step. First off, divine justice demands that sin has to have a consequence, a penalty. But here's the problem. Humanity can't pay that debt. We just don't have the resources. So step 3, Christ steps in. He becomes the substitute, taking the penalty in our place. And the result? Divine justice is completely satisfied, God's character is honored, and the way for mercy is cleared.
And you know, Spring pulls in scripture all the time to back this up. This quote he uses from the Apostle Peter just nails the idea of substitution. It's one person taking the punishment for another, the just for the unjust, the innocent for the guilty.
Okay, but this brings up a really big and honestly a pretty tricky question. If the cross was a payment for sin, then whose sins did it actually pay for? Spring's answer here is actually very careful and has two distinct sides to it.
So Spring's view is this really interesting balance. On the one hand, he argues that the purpose of the cross was particular. It was designed to guarantee, to secure the salvation of a specific group of people. But on the other hand, the offer of the cross is universal. Because Christ's sacrifice has infinite worth, it is powerful enough to save absolutely anyone. So the invitation to believe is genuinely and sincerely offered to every single person on the planet.
All right, so we've got forgiveness through a substitute. But for Spring, that's not even the whole story. The cross achieves something even bigger. It's not just about wiping your record clean. It's about giving you a totally new identity before God.
And that brings us to our next big idea, justification. Now, this is a legal term, through and through. It's not about God making you a good person on the inside. That's a different thing. Justification is about God, as the great judge, legally declaring you to be righteous in his court. It's an official change to your legal status.
So, in Spring's theology, this is where everyone starts. Your official account, your legal record, it reads guilty. But then something happens that changes everything.
And that something is a concept called imputation. Spring explains that Christ's perfect life, his perfect righteousness, is legally transferred, or you could say credited, to the believer's account. Think of it like this. It's like someone with a perfect credit score gifting it to someone who is hopelessly in debt.
And what's the end result? Well, that account no longer says guilty. It is now stamped righteous. And not because of anything the person did, but because of the righteousness they received as a gift through faith. It's a brand new legal standing.
So as we start pulling all these different threads together, you can really begin to see why he titled his work The Attraction of the Cross. It's not just some emotional thing. For him, it's a deeply intellectual and logical attraction.
So let's just recap the whole system he built. First, it's anchored in real history. Then, it offers a sacrificial solution to that huge problem of divine justice. It gives a specific purpose for redemption, but also a universal offer for anyone to accept. And finally, it ends with a complete legal justification, a new status of righteousness. For Spring, the fact that all of this fits together so perfectly, that is its primary attraction. And that really leaves us with a big question to think about today, doesn't it? In our modern world, which often prefers personal feelings over rigid systems, what really is the attraction of a 19th century theological framework like this one? Is there a new kind of appeal for its structure and its certainty, or does it just feel like a relic from a totally different time? It's definitely something worth chewing on.